Hello, I'm Catherine Campbell, founder of Leopard Job, here today with a very exciting guest. Matt White has been in the field of human analytics and psychometrics for about 7 years. He and I have had the wonderful opportunity to do some really good work together. I've had great success with his expertise. So, Matt, welcome to the jungle.
Thanks, Catherine. Good to be here.
Good. So, okay, these are some new words for a lot of people, I think, human analytics and psychometrics. Tell me a little bit about what that means.
The best way I can relate it is if you've ever seen the movie Moneyball.
Yes.
It's about the Oakland A's, and they use cybermetrics to draft, recruit, build a team based off actual statistics of performance and, tons and thousands of data points. And instead of building the team off of draft hype and promise and things like that, they're actually using cybermetrics. Well, psychometrics is you've got psychology and statistics. They get together and we're able to measure different traits or characteristics about a human being. And then our traits essentially drive or produce our behavior. And so what we're able to produce with our analytics is it's data points for leaders and business owners and decision makers to have on here's how this person's naturally wired up. Well, then we'll produce and we'll be able to predict how they will behave after we bring them on the team. And so it's really just another arrow in the quiver for leaders to or data points to know what will I really get when this person comes on the team, so that I can know what's going to happen and not have to wait 90 days or 180 days to really see who that person is.
For all of the expense it takes to bring somebody on board. I think it is amazing. And what really was true when I worked with you is this predictability. So first of all, I don't care how many interviews you have, they're selling them, you're selling you, right? So the interview is just a sales process. I can't even tell you, as a senior marketer, as a chief marketing officer, there's not a CEO out there who asked me a marketing question that was effective or efficient, because they don't understand marketing. So they might like me, but they would have no idea if I understood how to run a campaign, right? So now imagine that if you could predict how I would behave in a company that would not want to change, or how I would predict how I would change how I would act in a company in a that constantly wanted to change, like startup, right? So if you were bringing somebody out of a very traditional bank setting who had been a high performing marketer and bring them into a startup, even if it was a financial product, their knowledge of the finances might sound great and their success might sound great, but it's within the confines of very, very little change. And so give me some sort of no secret sauce or anything, but some sort of formula or an example of how you're predicting how someone behaves. What does that mean exactly?
So I'll come back to that, but I want to share this thought, especially in light of Leopard Job and Welcome to the Jungle and your mission, which is to flip what we know about work and the workforce and the work environment, to flip it on its head. And so
it's called Paul Power here, Matt. We call it Paul Power. Yeah.
So, so this is what I teach in the workshops when I'm training these executives. We first start with trying to do a little bit of paradigm busting. And what I mean by that is it's so traditionally ingrained in us that we naturally look at someone's experience as one of the top 2 things I'm looking for in this person to fill this role is they've got to have the right experience. And subconsciously, we equate that experience that they had for 15 years at this previous bank, like you mentioned, and that experience will translate perfectly because the job title is the same, VP of Marketing. And now I have this new startup here that's pre-revenue, but lots of promise and blah, 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 blah. And I need a VP of marketing. And this person has all the perfect experience that will translate perfectly here. And what I see is across the board, and I've got clients, I'm industry agnostic. So I've got clients in all kinds of markets. And I feel like it's almost like a fatal flaw, might be too difficult, might be too extreme, but we put this weight on the job title and the experience that they had. And we hope that experience will translate over and transition seamlessly into the exact role that I need them to do in this job. And it very rarely is apples to apples. And so I just wanted to mention that first. It's because it's just, I see, I talk with a lot of clients about probably 20% of what we do is around hiring. 80% is like, how do we look at this talent that we have? And number one, optimize them to keep them engaged at the highest possible level. So you're generating more revenue or ROI out of our payroll, but also treating them in a way that they don't want to take that call from a recruiter with another job opportunity. But relative to the hiring, I just see it's like such a consistent flaw for most people, is like we get in this traditional mindset of experience always is so important, or education, or so anyway, it's just now that translates into why think about this. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably are a business owner, or you've been managing people, you've got some kind of career. Think about it. We have hired people based off what they know and their experience. We put them in the role. We're excited for about 30 days, a little less excited at 60, and at 90, we're ready to can them. Mm-hmm. And why is that? Because we put all this weight on what they've done. And now it's to your point, like, how do we predict what we're going to get? Well, God wired people up with traits, with DNA. And also he allowed it so that when we are parented between 0 and 12 years old, our parents or our environment also shapes those traits. And the traits, our inherent DNA, is what drives actually the way we behave. And, in our world and with psychometrics, we say, no matter what your traits or characteristics are, that's actually your unique ability. If I'm stealing strategic coach language, that's your unique ability, or that's what comes effortless to you. And so what we're trying to do with psychometrics is figure out, when I look at this person, there is what they say in the interview, and then there's who they are. Because what you see in that interview is you're seeing their behavior. You're not necessarily seeing who they are.
That's right.
And what makes us human is our ability to step into this situation and realize, oh, if I really want this job, I might need to adapt this part of myself, and therefore I modify. Think about that. How many times have you had a recent nephew or somebody that's a college graduate, and like, man, I'm gonna coach you on how to handle this interview.
That's right. Absolutely. And there's tons of this. I think even going beyond, okay, so let's say we get through the interview, right? You agree that this person is a good fit culturally, because when we talk about, sort of that, sustaining that momentum, what happens is, in all of us, and I learned this from you, is that there's a tolerance level for change. That 30 days, everybody's happy with, because everybody's doing their best. Well, of course this was going to be new. Of course I was going to learn, new things and meet new people. So you're expecting that. But then a lot of people will start to expect to go back to working the way they worked. I expect this novelty, and now I'm going back to working the way I've always worked, right? Some people don't. They go, no, I expected this novelty, and I wanted to change everything about the way I was working because I couldn't say. So, that sort of tenacity for change is part of that wiring with the DNA, right? And then sort of work ethic is absolutely formed by our parenting. I think, though, sort of the next evolution is, general aspirations, and that is hard for. Some people are very, very detail oriented. These are the obvious sort of traits, right? And then some people are real visionaries people, and you cannot love the visionary side of someone and expect them to give you a 40-page report every week, right? So it's like you either need to bring someone on their team realizing you need more vision in your company, or right, you get the 40-page report because you're the one with the vision in your company. So tell me a little bit about, I know that whenever you're working with companies, I think this is really critical piece of what you do. Certainly employees need to take sort of these surveys that give, some insight into this DNA, these characteristics that they have. I think what's novel about what you do is you have the companies do that by job type. Mm-hmm. So it's not just saying, give me a job description. You will give me a 40-page report. You will, work, collaborate. Tell me a little bit about the different types of traits that, match the job roles themselves.
So I don't know when he wrote this book, but Patrick Lencioni wrote a book. I read it years ago called 3 Signs of a Miserable Job. And one of the signs, I may butcher this, but I think it was one of the signs was immeasurement. And his research showed that when people came to work and they weren't really clear on what they would be held accountable on and what exactly their job was, that was a sign of a miserable job. So one of the aspects of our program with what we do is we will help companies look at this job. You need to hire a project manager. Well, think about this, for example. We get hung up on titles. We don't do titles don't mean anything to me. Work allocation is what's important, because, if you're in a startup, you might have a project manager role. That project management role, while the title is the same, over here as a project manager for Amazon, you're never going to compare apples to apples. And so what we're interested in is helping that company and say, number one, you've got to be able to define success in that role. What will you hold that person accountable to? Right. And then once we're able to define, here's what success looks like, part of our program is helping the clients come up with, well, what will the behaviors need to be? How would this person behave to be successful in this job? And then once you get that benchmark of, acceptable behaviors, then what we know with psychometrics or human analytics is certain traits produce certain behaviors in a human personality. So then when we match the natural DNA that drive the behaviors with the actual behaviors we need, then we have a much higher success rate or chance. It is a much higher success rate a much higher success rate or statistical probability of that person working out if they're naturally and uniquely designed to behave the way that we need that person to behave in that job.
Absolutely. I mean, it is part of Leopard's mission is to help companies remove time completely from the equation of productivity. So if you work for a company that requires people to be there when the company is open, obviously a restaurant, right? You can't run a restaurant when people feel like working, right? You have to know you've got people there, you've got the bartender set up, you've got the waitresses set up, you've got the chefs, right? You've got all that set. And so time is very critical, but that is how some people are wired. Thank goodness, right? We definitely need a very strong service industry in every environment. But in the corporate world, where time is not, there's nothing you need someone to do at 8 o'clock in the morning if the report is not due till tomorrow at 5 p.m. It doesn't matter what they're doing today at 8 o'clock. So, this revelation, and I call it a work revolution, but it was a real revelation that people realize, oh, I can work from home. Like, not only can I, because now, we went through obviously the pandemic and had to, not only can I, but I can do this. I worried that I wouldn't be able to work from home and really work because I thought I'd do the laundry all day or just wouldn't be able to sit still. And people are figuring out how to make work for them. And so I would even argue, why are we even working 40 hours a week? What is it that you need done? And what I will get it done and give me a deadline to get it done. That is the goal. Now, for some people, let's say that you had 5 people with the same role. For some people, for that same accomplishment, those same goals that the company has for that role, it might take them 50 hours to accomplish that. For some people, it might take them 30 hours to accomplish that. As a business owner, who cares? Who cares how long it took them to do it? As long as I got it, it's to the quality that I expect. And we can go back to next, let's start the next week. And what's the next expectation? If someone is working 50 hours a week and very frustrated at the amount of money they're getting paid because they're like, I work too much, then quit. This is not the job for you, because I have several people doing it for 30 hours a week. It is not the company's role. And I think that this reversal of stop asking what your company can do for you today, right? But also expecting a respectful place to work that appreciates good work is, not really being had enough. And that's sort of the bottom line issue that we have in a global place, a global workforce that is largely over 60% looking to quit within the next year of their role. Over 60% of the workforce on the globe wants to quit in the next year. And then you have well over 30, I think it's around 35% or so of people who don't intend to quit and are completely disengaged. Talk about a lack of productivity. So is this the sort of conversation that you're having with your companies that you're working with at all, where you're saying, I don't even know why we're talking about time and 40 hours a week?
Yeah. Well, particularly the disengagement piece. And that's one thing that I love about what we're doing is we're measuring how is that person wired up, and then we're measuring how they're modifying who they are in the current job situation, which is ultimately a reflection on the management. Okay. And so then what we're doing with our clients is helping you understand, okay, if this is this person's unique ability, we can really actually tell you how engaged, how much they are leveraging their unique ability when they come to work, or are they not leveraging, which leads to when we're not coming to work, getting to be who we are, therefore we're having to modify, then that comes at a cost. And it usually will be either in feeling overutilized or underutilized, which ultimately leads to disengagement. Now, there's also an aspect, when you talked about the work, I think there's some principles, that are not being talked about in that. Like, I think there's a principle that I've seen in a lot of, it's changed some now that I've really understand psychometrics, but I've heard this a lot, is that work will expand to the time allotted for it.
Yes, that's the Parkinson's law, I think it is.
Right. Okay. So I think that's true. I don't want to say universally true, but it also, I've seen that be more true of certain traits than other traits. Okay. And I think of some of what you're talking about too, it just has to do with, like, I don't want to say hardwired, but an attitude that's ingrained in people that they can change. You start looking at can people change? The answer is yeah. Now, can you have a personality shift when you're 45 years old and be somebody that you're not? No, I mean, that's a clinical event. That doesn't happen very often, right? But like, you can learn different behaviors. You can learn different attitudes and different mindsets that affect how you approach working 30 versus 50 hours.
That's right. And let's go back. I think it's Parkinson's law. I will look that up and I'll put it in the notes if I'm wrong, exactly what it is. Because I was actually going to do, I have a little spotlight thing I do. I was going to do a spotlight on it. So let's say that that 40-page report or whatever is not due till Friday. And you can get it done in 10 hours, right? And it's Monday. And that's really the bulk of what you're supposed to be working on this week. So basically, it's going to take you 10 hours. It's only Monday. You're going to do 2 hours today, 2 hours on Tuesday, because, and then you're going to act like you're working and try to be available and, run to the grocery store and on your phone, right? Whatever, but you're not really working for the company. But if the company's decided the value of your role is that 40-page report, and I get it, then don't worry about what's going on every single day. At the same time, a lot of the disgruntledness is around finances, right? We all know if we came into a bunch of money, we would likely not have the jobs we have. So what if somebody said, you know what, I could walk dogs. I love dogs. I haven't even thought about doing this. I love dogs. I'm in a really dog-friendly neighborhood. I tend to kind of get started later and like around 10, 11 o'clock in the morning with my own stuff and work through, the evening. But in the morning, I want to walk. I want to go. I want to do things and move. So that's where I could go rover. If I'm going to walk my dog anyway, might as well take 3 more with me, right? And go rover in the morning. Incentive to have to get out because now I've already committed to someone, right? These families that need their dog walked, make a little extra money while I'm doing it, definitely feel better that I've gotten moving for the day. And so now I've sort of got this little side hustle. I'm not going to say I would quit my main gig over it, but I've got this side hustle that I feel really good about. And it sort of lightens the load or the responsibility for this company to be providing all of my financial well-being. Mm-hmm. And that is, you could take that much further. You could say, I'm just going to start, an Amazon, retailer, and I'm going to go and make my little store and have my little stuff, and I'm going to work on that. So again, the idea that somebody needs to be sitting down at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, when what you need them to do is not due until Friday, is the bigger conversation. How big do you think that is for the CEOs of today to handle?
Yeah, because if you thinking about payroll, the actual time spent doing the job, and then being at the office and all this other stuff, it's this huge opportunity. Because the other way I look at it, it's like, with our world, with the analytics that we have, we're able to, we got 19, buckets. And where I think I've seen clients generate a lot of value out of our program is being able to look at those 19 that makes up that person and says, one, what do they do effortlessly? What are they really good at? Because to your point, I don't think we need to just that it was a traditional mindset of, well, you need to come and put in your 40 hours a week. And out of that 40 hours a week, they probably work 25, right? But there's going to be a fundamental shift that has to happen, more of like project or outcome-based work instead of just the steady plotter. But the reality is there are some roles in companies that they need to be there 40 hours a week, and they're really doing that work. But it's, like you use the restaurant industry and part of what you're doing with Leopard Job and things like that. And it's like that translates well into certain types of role, but then there's some where it's just not going to all be. I think there will be some roles in companies where it's like, yeah, it would be great if I could go and walk a dog, but I think the higher the more leadership and responsibility that you take on as an employee or partner or business owner, the less free time you have to just pick and choose when you want to work. But with that increased responsibility is, you need to be there. And usually as you go up, it's not 40 hours. It's to push that rock up the hill. It takes a lot more than 40 hours.
That's exactly right. And that's where the level of commitment, the risk reward, right? Your life, the style, that's part of the Leopard Job project that I'm writing. And it's a project where you actually back in the work you do based on the life you want. Stop just going, I want the big career. I want the big career, where you have the big career and now you never see your children, right? Or, you don't have children, or you do have children and you still want the big career, where this is what happens when you get the big career, right? You do work 50, 60 hours a week. But you may love that. We need people to love that too. And lots of people do. I loved it, right? So that's where, again, sort of working to how it is you want to work. So, I know you work with all size companies, some really big ones, and some, mom and pops a little bit too, but by and large, people who are very serious about retention and also having, a very modern workplace that is productive and successful. So since you're sort of cutting edge with these guys and intimately involved with the C-suite, I'm curious where AI has come into conversations, how you feel like the evolution of many roles, not that necessarily, although many roles will just go away, the need for people in companies obviously will still be there. So it's sort of the evolution of the roles. Do you feel like that's an actively engaging conversation, or it's like once everybody else does it, we'll see how it works for us?
I would say within my client base, it's usually 80-20. So 20% of my clients are on the cutting edge. They're thinking about AI in their business and yada, yada. And the other 80% is like, yeah, we're concerned about it, or we see it as an opportunity, but it's still in its infancy. And in fact, I read an article this morning of like, there was that huge threat of, man, all of these lower level jobs, for lack of a better word, are going to be extinct because AI is going to replace it. But then I read it's like, at this stage in the game, AI is still so expensive that it's actually not more cost efficient to replace. It was actually, I think it was something like only really like 23% of those, manual type jobs. And I think the example they used was like someone who's inspecting quality control for like on a bread company.
Okay.
Like AI can visually do that, but it's like the cost that it takes to create that AI and the robotics and stuff to do that is actually more expensive than just paying the human to do it. So I still think like I'm excited about it. A little, and again, I'm in no way am I the authority on what's the future for AI. I am somewhat scared about the legislation and where that could go in terms of if we don't get out in front enough. But overall, like I'm positive of how I think it's going to. I think you also just look back at like technology shifts throughout, from the industrial age on. I'm sure a lot of those things like the locomotive scared a ton of people, but it's like that produced tons of jobs.
That's right.
And then the telegram probably scared a lot of people because it put the Pony Express out of business, but then it created a lot of jobs. And then the telephone created a lot of jobs. And like, I don't know, that part of that is, you and I are wired up pretty similarly. So it's like any challenge is not really seen as a threat. We see it as an opportunity.
That's exactly right. Well, and I think the biggest opportunity, and this is again where I go back to the conversation about how CEOs will handle removing the 40-hour conversation. Let's say a marketer particularly as a marketer, the copywriting out of ChatGPT, the ability to get, a cadence for a journey, the actual code for SEO. I mean, it's all there. So I really would not need as large of a team to accomplish the same things. So there are some roles that quite immediately are being affected.
Yeah.
And it's a phenomenal opportunity if a social media promotions manager can get their entire 30 days worth of promotions out of ChatGPT in 30 seconds. You just do not need them to work 40 hours a week. However, the value, somebody has to review it, somebody has to organize it, somebody has to schedule it to where it's in line with us releasing products or whatever it is. Someone still has to oversee the content. But starting from scratch and say, what should I write about next week is hours and hours and hours and hours worth of work. Okay, that goes away. So that, I think it will be, we all know we can name every single industry that has evolved just in the last 20 years since the internet has become a thing, right? I mean, it just significantly has changed, but then look how many jobs the internet has created. So I don't doubt for a moment that there's a place. It's just very much time for the conversation. Just like Leopard is more about employees, starting to imagine what your work would look like if you weren't just, working to live. Same thing needs to happen with companies where they need to start to think, what would my company look like if I didn't need so many people? Because the benefits for people in general are just extraordinary. I talk quite a bit about mental health benefits. Gosh, I mean, is it the company's job to keep you mentally healthy? And if it's the company's, the reason you're not mentally healthy is the company, then please do quit. I mean, that is insane, right? Literally insane. So it's, that at some point we need to take ownership of our opportunities because of technology capabilities. Uber, to run somebody out for a ride and instantly get paid when you drop them off, right? Uber Eats, these opportunities exist in ways that just literally did not exist. And so we can't say, can't stand to work, right? That's just got to stop in our society. And it's because of technology, it will get better and is right now being able to take advantage of. And at the same time say, I don't want AI to take my job. Really? Because you sound miserable. That's how like a lot of sort of mid-level people are. And so what a great opportunity to reverse that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also read another interesting stat this morning that I don't remember the exact percentage, but they said that 16 to 18-year-olds, that there's the highest percentage of that group of people. I think it was like 30-something% that have a job or are looking for a job. It's the highest in like 40 years.
Wow.
So I thought that was a really encouraging stat of like,
a new wave.
Yeah. A
new wave of people coming into the workforce. Well, there's no doubt that it is a challenge to get people to work. That's what I say. It's a challenge to get people to work that already have a job. It's really hard to get people to work that don't have a job. And so the work ethic of America, let's say, forget even as far as your family, what people see on social media, how they perceive work, has definitely evolved because you could jump in right now. I mean, if you've got a great blog, particularly if it's a video blog, you need someone to be a moderator of that channel. Well, a 17-year-old can do that. If it's, nothing, you're not, talking anything crazy, nothing too adult, let's say. So, but if you've got a blog on finance and the 17-year-old moderator can pop in there and make sure no one's saying anything wrong or trying to push their own products, what a great job for a 17-year-old. So these are, the capabilities, again, just need to are way outweighing, I guess, the lack of benefits from technology and AI, especially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up this conversation, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you about sort of the future of work here. Yeah. Any parting thoughts or any sort of conversations that are happening broadly that you can start to see sort of pieces of this, what I call the work revolution or evolution, or concerns even? We have $1 trillion expiring in commercial real estate over the next 2 years. Likely, we will see a lot of defaults from the remote workforce evolution. And, what are we doing with these buildings? Lots of conversations going on. Curious what you're hearing out there, or any parting advice you have.
My world is strictly human capital and helping CEOs design teams, to take them in the next 5 to 10 years and exit, whatever it is that their goal is, but they're focused on that. And so, and again, like I've got clients all over. The themes that I'm talking about and the questions that the CEOs talk to me about the most are, when they're looking at their A players, are their A players being fully optimized? And if not, like, what can they be doing to ensure that those, because, we talk about it's hard to find talent and stuff like that. I think it's so much more costly when you lose somebody that you've invested in for 8 years on your executive team, and then they get a better offer somewhere else, or it's not even a better offer. We actually come to find that they were managed improperly, and we lose them when you didn't have to lose them. And so, most of my conversation is around that. Like, I'm not necessarily an expert in a specific industry or banking or real estate, although I've got clients in all of those. So I dab in knowing what's going on in those different industries, but it's like the conversations are really around, is the team optimally designed to achieve the results that we expect to achieve? And why I say all of that is, I'm a pretty big college football fan, and you look at winning programs, and the head coaches still go on recruiting visits. They still go and connect with those top talent prospects. And then I wouldn't say a lot, but like a lot of CEOs I just said it a lot again. Several CEOs that I have, it's kind of like I see them doing that for their team, that they're going out hunting talent, and and that's been somewhat of a mindset shift. And I guess that is one thing I would say that where I've seen a lot of my clients that are really pushing ahead and separating themselves from competitors, it really is around talent. And the traditional mindset is, yeah, we've got HR, and I'm not against HR doing that, but it's like, I've also heard this phrase, you put your greatest talent on your biggest opportunities. Well, for the future of our workforce and the future of a winning football team, you have to have a robust talent pipeline, right? Because when your key quarterback goes down, you've got to be able to put somebody in there who's just as good, right? And then I get encouraged when I hear stories of my CEOs that have they're actively going out recruiting talent and hunting talent, and it's not just relegated into a 23-year-old who just graduated in HR that's responsible for filling talent in the company.
It's exactly right. It's that statement that people don't leave jobs, they leave managers, right? Because people are not really working just the job. They're working with someone. They're working for someone. They're rooting that company on because of the leaders of the company. They believe in the mission. So that is a great point. And I think it's just really in the last, not even 10 years, maybe 6-7 years or so, become more of a conversation, this human capital and the potential of really motivating people to their fullest potential.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you, Matt. I so much appreciate your time. Like I said, all the best to you. And I hope we work together again soon.
Yeah, likewise, Catherine. Thanks for the invite.